Alright, so we're going to review for your Unit 3 test. We're going to kind of start backwards and work our way back toward from 3.5 over to 3.1. And so we're starting at the very end, 3.5 section. So what you see on the screen here, this problem is going to ask you to find a percentage for every one of these, okay? So the question will say, what percent are you spending on groceries? What percent are you spending on rent? What percent are you spending on the other category? And what percent are you spending on fun? It's possible that they may ask you about one of them, but it's possible that they may ask you about all four. So make sure that you are reading your instructions on your test very clearly to see what you're supposed to be finding, which one or all of them. So the first thing that we need to know is we need to remind ourselves that we are definitely doing this part times the whole and the n, right? N's on one side, part times the whole is on the other side. We've got to decide for each of the categories what our equation's going to be. Well, first of all, the whole means how much are we spending for the whole month? And that's going to be the same for every single problem, okay? So if I kind of write this down, N is equal to P times W. N is equal to P times W. And we're going to plug in what we know. All right, for groceries, before we start, let's go ahead and find out what my whole is. And that means I'm going to add up all of these dollar amounts. So I have 300, 500, 200, and 600. Well, 200 and 300 give me 500, and 500 and 500 give me 1,000, and 1,000 plus 600 is going to give me 1,600. Now, if you didn't like what I just did, just add them up. 300 plus 500 plus 200 plus 600, and it'll give you 1,600. So that's the dollar amount that's my whole. So I want you to see right here where I am putting in 1,600 for each one of these problems. All right, the percent is what I'm trying to find. So the P is going to stay the same in every one of these problems because the percent is what I'm trying to find of every single one of them. The N, however, is where the difference is. The N is coming from the chart that you have up here, and the part is the number that you see for those categories. So for groceries, it's 500. For other, it's 300. For rent, it's 600. And for fun, it's 200. And so we're going to solve. We're just going to use our calculator and we're going to solve all of these problems. Without even really doing that much work, I want you to see that both of these are together and it ends up being 1,600p. Every one of them are. And I want you to see that I have to divide by 1,600 to get p by itself. You have to do that on all of them. What I did to one side, I have to do to the other side. So what I want you to know is that we have to divide by 1,600 on every single one of these. That cancels the 1,600 on this side. And so what I'm finding is 500 divided by 1,600, and 300 divided by 600, and 200 divided by 1,600, and 600 divided by 1,600. It's going to give me a decimal number. The decimal number then needs to be moved. The decimal places, sorry, let me find this number. 500 divided by 1,600 gives me a P of 0.3125. Remember, I need to move it 2 places to the right, and so my 31.25% is how much groceries is. Okay, there's my first one. My second one is 300 divided by 1,600, and I find that my P is 0.1875. Move it 2 places, and I get 18.75%. There's my second answer. I take 600 and I divide it by 1,600. And I get P is equal to 37.375. Move it 2 places and I get 37.5%. My last one is 200 divided by 1,600. And I find P is equal to 1.125. Move it 2 places and I get 12.5%. So common sense tells us that the smallest number that you see in your chart, 200, should have the smallest percentage, and it does. The next smallest would be the other of 300, and it has the next smallest percentage because 12 and then 18 are both small. The 500 and 600 should not be terribly far apart because they're not terribly far apart in numbers, and 131 and 137. So that sounds about right that those 4 answers could be my correct answer for this. Okay. Let's move on and let's look at a percentage, still part of a whole, okay, but we're going to talk about a word problem. I'm going to type it up here. This one is Susie paid $50.50 for a shirt. That was 25% off. All right. So we're looking for what was the original price. Ow, sorry. All right, so the part of the whole, let me write this and set this up a little bit for you. All right, so we know the percentage off and we know the part of the whole. So let me see. All right, so we're going to set this up. N is equal to percent times whole. For this one, what we paid is still my whole. I'm sorry. So we're going to plug that in as $50.50. My percent is given to me. I have to change it from 25% to a decimal by moving the decimal place 2 places to the left. And N is what I don't know, okay? And N is actually going to be the percentage that was discounted that we're going to have to put back on the price that we paid. So we type into our calculator 0.25 times the $50.50 that we paid, and we find N is equal to $12.62. I put that slash mark, but I want to show you what it actually was. It was 625 in your calculator. So we want to make sure that we round this up, okay? And so this is 12.63. This is dollars, okay? We're talking about money, so we can't add a money amount that's not there. So what this is how much money that they took off of the original price. That's the discounted amount. So what we're going to do is we're going to take $50.50, we're going to add $12.63 to it. And so then when we do that, we ended up with $11,363.13 is how much the original price was. Okay. All right, you're eating here in town because there's not fancy places, but you ate at Western Sizzlin'. And your bill is $25. We leave a 15% tip. How much was the total bill? Okay, so we go through here and we just set it up. We are looking for the $25 is your whole. The tip is 0.15 as the decimal. We're looking for how much the tip actually was, and then we're going to add the tip back to the $25 to find out what it was. So my calculator, I put 0.25, I multiply it, 0.15 times the $25 bill, and I find that N is $3.75. $3.75 gets added to my $25, so that's where my N is. It's the tip. And so when I add, I end up with $28.75 as my total bill. Okay. $25 is 20% of what number? We just plug it in, the same thing that we've been doing, okay? Multiply here and I get 0.20W. I want W all by itself. And so I have to divide the opposite of what you have. When they're touching, it means multiply. To get them apart, I divide. I divide by the 0.20 because that's what I want to go away. And so I put 25 in my calculator, divide it by 0.20, and I find that my whole, the W that I'm solving for, is 125. Okay. 25 is what percent of 15? So 25 is my equal sign. What percent is something I don't know, and 15 is my whole number. I multiply here and I get 15p. I want p by itself, so I do the opposite of multiply, so I divide. Put in my calculator 25 divided by 15, and I find p, the percent, is 1.6666666. Okay. I move the decimal place 2 places to the right, and I find this to be a decimal, and I'm going to round, obviously. And so the 6 makes this round up, and so I end up with this percentage as a final answer. If they ask you for a whole number percentage, you wouldn't use this. You would see that this 6 makes that round up, and 167 would be a whole number percent. Okay, so make sure they're asking you for a decimal or for a whole number. Now they're going to give you a fraction, and remember, fractions have 3-part answers: fraction, decimal, and percent. They gave us a fraction, they want a decimal and a percent. So a decimal is going to be solved by dividing. 7 divided by 20, we read from top to bottom, this guy means divide. And when you do that, you end up with a decimal of 0.35. So there's the other piece. And then I need this as a percentage, and remember, we've been talking over and over that if you want a percentage from a decimal, you move it 2 places to the right, and so we end up with 35%. All right, we're rounding a number that is given to you to a place value that they ask you about. So they want you to round to the nearest thousandth. Okay, so we've got tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So I'm going to draw my line. I look at the 2 to see if the 2 is going to make us add 1 or stay the same. And 2 is in that lower category of stay the same, and so 9.539 is my final answer because it stays the same. Improper fraction written as a decimal. Same thing here. I take 9, I divide it by 4 in my calculator, and I find 2.25. If it asks you for a decimal, it's okay that it's a whole number and a decimal. It has to be. Okay. If they give you a decimal and they ask you for a mixed number, I want you to draw the connection here that anything on the right side of the decimal is your whole number, and so you have 2. This guy is your fraction piece, okay? So remember that any decimal that you see is the same thing as the number that you see over the place value, tenths, hundredths. This can be simplified, so you should do that because your instructions will tell you to do so. And so this is the same thing as 2 3/4. When you simplify right here, please don't forget to bring your whole number over because you will miss the whole problem if you don't, or at least a good portion of points if you don't bring your whole number over. Okay. It says to write 9/1000 as a decimal. Okay. Decimals are found by putting them in your calculator and dividing. Does it make sense? I see 9 right here. I see 9. Place values are tenths, hundredths, thousandths, right? Thousandths. So here's my answer. The last problem that we want to talk about is to write some words that are given to you as a decimal. And this is kind of tricky, so I want to practice. Let me make this bigger. So the words are 10 and 51. 10 and 51 hundredths. What do we want to make sure that we are aware of? The and is my decimal. So 10. 51 is what I see or I read. Hundredths tells me how many place values. Tenths, hundredths. So I have 51. Okay? What happens if this didn't say hundredths and it said thousandths? Well, let's start over. I would have 10 and I know I have 51, but I have tenths, hundredths, thousandths. I would have a placeholder and then 51. What happens if I put that 0 in the wrong place and I wrote it like this? This is no longer 10 and 51 hundredths. This is 10 and 510 thousandths because I read what I see. And so you can't put the decimal, the placeholder at the wrong end because it becomes a different number. So make sure that if you have thousandths, you have tenths, hundredths, thousandths, you have that many places, okay? And then you just put a placeholder if you need to. All right, that's our last problem for your review. Make sure that you are prepared for your test before you walk in on test day.